Welcome, listeners, to another episode. Today we have a double guest special performance, special treat for you. We have probably one of the most accomplished, one of the most acclaimed strength and conditioning experts in Australia, Mr. Andrew Locke, as well as his lovely daughter, Lorna, herself very accomplished in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, as well as having quite a number of strength accomplishments to her name also. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Oh, thanks, Kim. Good to catch up again.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think something not a lot of people might know, Lorna and I actually traveled to LA together in 2014, I think, for the World Championships. She was herself a young blue belt. I think you were, what, about 18 at the time?
I think I just turned 18.
Yes, so I was sort of like her chaperone, if you say. But
That's
yeah,
right. And then she turned up with a tattoo when she got home.
That's right.
That's on YouTube.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, this podcast may deviate a little bit from our usual BJJ talk, but Andrew, you are a very experienced parent of a jiu-jitsu athlete, so we can talk about that. And yeah, as I said, it would be a shame to miss some of your knowledge in regard to strength training. So yeah.
Yeah, why not? Huh?
Yeah,
I mean, how lucky I was.
Yeah. What? I mean, Lorna was also a coach of my boy Macca back when he was in getting into BJJ, and she was a huge influence in his life. But Andrew, what does it take to raise a daughter like Lorna? Because she's not your average gal. She's a little bit special. How'd you do that? What's the magic?
I think it's the absolute fortune of being able to know that every kid has their own perhaps advantages, disadvantages, the journey that they're going on. And it was something that the day she walked into a jiu-jitsu place, that was at Dominance when it was up on the corner of, was it Church
It was in
Street?
Richmond Plaza.
Yeah.
Upstairs.
And I was seeing one of the guys there, Dave Hart at the time, and Dave said, bring your daughter down. And that was it. She grabbed a pair of tracksuit pants and never came back.
How old were you then, Lorna? What age?
I was 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was September 2005.
Oh, you're one of those people. You remember dates and months.
I can't remember how someone mentioned it to me. I think we were looking at the records of when I first signed up, and I remember the date. It was just really bizarre to think it's been that long.
No, you tore through the divisions there. You did quite a lot of international comps as well, both as a juvenile and then later on as an adult, and pretty successful too. Can you just, no need for humbleness here, just let us know your what you actually, where you traveled to, what you did, and yeah, just give us, let's start with you, Lorna, and then we'll move on to Andrew.
Well, I was really, really lucky because both mum and dad were incredibly supportive of my journey. I mean, they let me do any sport I wanted as a kid. And we did, I think, dance, gymnastics, basketball, netball. Pretty much every year I was given the option of, you've got to take your schoolwork seriously as well. So you need to drop a sport. And as it came down to it, jiu-jitsu was the one that I stuck with. And, mum and dad would take me out of school early on a Friday if we had to, and we'd pile in the car and they'd drive me interstate, and it'd be me in the backseat reading or playing on my phone for, the 8-10 hour journeys. And, every weekend that we could, we'd get up there. Mum and dad took me out to New Zealand for the Abu Dhabi trials. And that was the most unforgettable, most bizarre. I remember looking at up at mum and dad and all my family who were in New Zealand in the crowd. And I knew I had like 2 minutes to go, but I'd gotten on top of a mountain. I was like, it's good. I've got it. And they were like, what do you mean? I was like, no, it's fine. We're good now. Like I can hold this out. Life's good. And we ended up winning the trip across. So I got the trip paid for, and mum and dad had to fund themselves to come and keep me company Abu Dhabi. So,
and lucky enough, it was your cousin was also a chef and running the Abu Dhabi Convention Centre, so he was able to help you out there as well.
Very, very lucky. That was the world's worst weight cut I've ever done for sure. But you end up doing what you got to do to make it work.
Yeah, I can remember you being on the side of the mat doing homework as well, like in between rounds or in between classes and stuff. Like, it was unbelievable what you did. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've been doing since? Because I know you also took a bit of a sidestep towards powerlifting and things like that. How did that go?
So when I was 20, I was working the casino and security, working nice long 12.5-hour night shifts. And I decided that I wanted to compete in a bodybuilding comp bikini in I think I gave myself 5 months. And I mean, I'd said it probably a million times before, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. And I never got around to it, never really stuck to it. So when I asked Dad and I was like, cool, how do I do this? He goes, train hard and don't eat shit. So that was the great advice that I took, and been there, done that. And I decided that I liked eating a lot more than I liked looking skinny, which is cool. It's my thing. And we did some powerlifting stuff down at Slaughterhouse. Dad and I headed down there quite regularly, and we were lucky enough to have the gym in literally our garage at home, which was Dad's workspace. And yeah, I would frequently get taken out there and form corrected and thrown in the deep end, because I just like competing. I always have. Doesn't matter if I don't think I'm going to win, I will go out there and try and win, because it's just what you do.
Where does that come from? Because that's Andrew, do you have the same thing? Do you like to compete? Is this a family thing? You guys like to?
Absolutely, yeah. But there's a part there, Lorna, which is amusing. Is I think very early on in the stage, Lorna, which I hope she still has it, and I know she does, but she doesn't like losing. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if she puts a bit on the cup. So yeah, we had a little saying that, basically that's okay if you don't like losing, because people who are good losers tend to become losers. So go for it. Be a bad loser.
And are you the same? Is that your view as well?
Well, I don't lose.
Okay. I got it.
I don't find out, all right? I just win.
Yeah.
A little fun fact about Andrew. I think this is, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, that you hold the Australian bench press record for the over 50s in Australia. Is that right?
With 3 different federations and 1 world record now. So
wow,
we're going to just keep going.
Wow.
It's what you got to do.
Yeah.
It's, life is competition, really. It doesn't matter what you do. Everything you do is to some extent competitive, either if not with yourself, it's with others. So yeah. I think most of the competitions are really between our own ears anyway. And so that's the best one.
Do you like to have competitions always in the future? Are you always working towards something? Is that what you're saying with that?
Yeah, but it's even professionally. I'm always working towards some particular goal within work as well. So there's a lot of projects. I work with actually the coach of the world's strongest man, Thor Bjornsson, the guy who deadlifted 501 kilos. We work as a team, and that's part of what I do. Is just we're always working to be stronger, to be better at what we do. It's just life. Life is it's like jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is life. What we do is life. It's always getting better.
It's not separate. I get what you mean. It's it's just an expression of life. Yeah,
absolutely, it is. And yeah, jiu-jitsu was definitely the one that Lorna took in, and that was it. It was amusing there because when she said she competed in the bikini, I think it was a year before that she became the only girl or the only female on Arnold Schwarzenegger's security team out in Australia.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, and he was getting mobbed too, so you got to have your work out for you.
That was very, very entertaining. I mean, you got to take the opportunities where they pop up, and when that happened, I managed to get in touch with Tony Doherty for that one, and I did that for 3 years running, I think.
All right.
Arnold thought you were quite amusing.
Yeah, talk a bit more.
Yeah, he actually stopped it twice because I was getting really angry because the guys were not quite paying attention, and I kind of snapped at one of them. And Arnold came up and was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. They're just not listening." He was like, "You're a strong girl, aren't you?" I was like, "Yeah, pretty much."
Pay attention to Arnie or die. Yeah. Love it. That's awesome.
And Andrew, so this is, as I said, primarily a jiu-jitsu podcast. What advice would you give to our listeners, to jiu-jitsu athletes, with regard to strength training? We've asked this of other guests that we've had on our show, but you're probably by and far the most expert in this area. So talk us through what needs to happen.
There's a really good thing. See, I was also planned to play a career in Major League Baseball, but fell in love with weight training instead at a very important juncture. I think one of the things there which really is important in any successful sporting endeavor, and if you're going to enjoy it and you're going to put weight training in there, make the weight training specific to the thing that you do. For example, bench press is a freaking useless thing to do if you want to be a baseball player. It's got no point. So I, of course, got stuck into doing things that weren't specific to what I should be doing. So when it comes to strength training for Jiu-Jitsu, you replicate the movements and things that you're going to be performing in to become stronger with. Now, you could say a squat with a bar on the back. That's not unreasonable to load a body, but I'd probably prefer to do a front squat. If I was working for Jiu-Jitsu, I'd do a Zercher squat with the bars across the front, not so much a back squat. So everything we would design as far as Jiu-Jitsu goes, pull apart what you're having a problem with, and then you're going to apply strength to that. It's not just a general strength routine. Is deadlifting useful? Yeah, it's okay. But we can probably do better things with some offset kettlebells that'll make you stronger. So the key to that to really is specificity in weight training will give you the greatest benefits. But the most important thing is do your jiu-jitsu more importantly than your strength training. You know, you can't make up for not having skill.
I love that. Man, I just realized something, right? This is so relevant because I do, like, this is you, right? I just realized, I don't know if you can see this.
Hang on, no, you've got your background blurred.
Yeah, I'm turn off my blur, 1 second. This is important because...
yes, I know the video already.
Dude, which one is it?
Blur. They look like one of the base fives that I do.
This is the big three for the shoulder, right?
Oh wow, and, the big three, gotcha.
This is the big three, and like so basically what you have me do every morning, because I look at you every day. I've never met you before, right? But I work with you every day, and your lovely assistants, because jiu-jitsu for me is about kind of longevity, mobility, these sorts of things, right? And my PT sends me your videos to do stuff. It's just like it really blew me away when I saw your face come on the camera. So anyway,
you got a bright PT.
What's that?
You got a bright PT, don't you?
I do. I've got a very bright PT. Yeah, Lockie Veal, he's a good guy. But yeah, I guess there's another piece to this as well. Is like, how do we use strength for improving longevity and injury prevention?
Oh, you know the answer here. It relates exactly to what jiu-jitsu is. Do the basics. Now, that's what I mean by doing the basics in rehab. Make sure your glutes are strong. Make sure your shoulder girdle's strong. You don't need to be too esoteric. You need to attend to the basics and do the basics really well. The better you are at the basics, everything else is going to fall into place. And that's what you do on that shoulder routine. That's a very basic thing to do. I created that about 15 years ago, maybe. I think it could have been.
I've just learned about it a month ago, so I'm a late bloomer.
Yeah, so it was funny. I think Lorna was probably most of my early video models. So we do this, we do that. We test this, we test that. And it's great having a daughter like Lorna because that allowed me to be the test case. I would look at things with her and we'd do things.
Yeah, you enjoy picking me up in front of everyone and going, this is one of the most unusual body types, and going and showing people almost every time I've gone along to one of the seminars. Dad's like, you come here, let me show people how weird you are.
Yeah. And that's Lorna is made for jiu-jitsu in so many ways because she has a beautifully shallow hip socket. And that can allow her to...
I've never heard anyone talk in terms of someone's depth of hip socket. Do go on.
But that is the thing that makes a massive difference in jiu-jitsu. Trust me, if you've got a deep hip socket, and that likely comes from a Celtic background, often it's more likely to run from a Scots-Irish background, you might get stuck when your knees are about 90 degrees in the hip socket. Whereas when you fight somebody who can put their knees around their own ears, you're in trouble.
I see.
Yeah, because if you can't get that hip flexion, you're going to have to go into back flexion to get the hip flexion. So a person who has a lovely shallow hip socket, well, they can take a guard and they can do a lot of things in guard that a tight person can't do. They're stuck. So there is a genetic advantage to those people who have that. And Lorna's, I don't know, maybe as far as height goes, how much shorter are you than me?
I'm like 165 centimeters. I think I've just passed into the average for a female now, so I'm not a midget anymore.
I think I'm about
Still taller than
183.
me, Lorna.
And Lorna's got a longer reach than me.
Right. Wow. There you go.
So
We're getting all
there's
the facts on
advantages.
Lorna.
I want to hear some more facts on Andrew. So we always ask our guests sort of about their beginnings. Usually it's around jiu-jitsu, but can you tell us like how you got into, I suppose, like you're an extremely well-respected physio, how you got into that field, how you went towards the sort of strength side of things. Like, yeah, tell us about your beginnings.
Well, I can really go back a long way. I was probably, well, it was funny, like when I first started out as it was, my parents hid my football boots and they said, you're not going to play football because you're probably going to hurt somebody. I wasn't that much bigger than most other kids, but I was a bit bigger. And so they said, all right, baseball and cricket. And that worked for me straight away. It was something I did better than other people. It was just something you move towards, a thing you do very well. So that tended me on a career of starting to enjoy sport more than I did schoolwork. So the baseball thing, I became very much a shoulder-based person by the time I graduated from physio. Although I was doing strength training, I had a shoulder background. But I actually wanted to be a professional wrestler in the WWE, WWF. That was a career move I was heading towards.
Yeah.
And then I got injured heading towards that. So that's why I always think it's always more helpful if your professional has actually injured themselves and you see them, they know what you're going through. So it's been like a 25-year journey on basically becoming the best back person that can exist. So as far as back rehab, I traveled the world pretty much with that sort of work. So it became a passion that the sport's always been a big part of me. I've never not done it. I actually would say, honestly, and I do recognize that I have a body image disorder. But seriously, I wake up every morning and I'm small. I'm little. I'm a small guy in my head, okay? And so
that was my partner, Andrew. I've got the same problem here at home with my partner. It's exactly the same.
It's a thing to embrace. Rather than be offended by your disorder, how can you make the most of it?
Yeah.
Great. For me, it works really well. I embrace it totally, and then I use it as part of my professional work. I deal with people who have probably got similar problems, and we don't even call it a problem. We call it actually an advantage. It's an advantage to have a disorder, and that's the way you look at it. Some people might say they look at a disorder negatively. I look at it positively. What gift does it give you? How can you use this thing that makes you different? And that's where it came with me. Yeah, I wanted to be a professional wrestler, and I got injured. All right, I stuck with the physio work, but I kept weight training. That way you learn how to work with injuries and keep moving. So that's been a big part of it. Like Lorna, I remember she broke a toe in one comp she was doing. And she looked up at the mat and said, with her opponent, she talks to me across the thing as she talks to most people while she's fighting. And she goes, I just think I broke my toe. I said, yeah, you got 45 seconds to go.
No, you go, well, it can't get any more broken then, can it either?
That was it, part of it, yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So, you take that because that's it. It's okay. You're looking okay. We'll fix it after.
So what's with Lorna with you? And like this is probably we have not talked about this, so I just hope that this is an okay kind of line of questioning to go down. But you do have shallow hip sockets is one thing we know about you, right? But that aside, right? When you grow up in a family where it's very sport, it's very lifting, and your dad actually has a self-confessed like body dysmorphic kind of thing going on, and we all do, right? We definitely all do. But does that, as a young woman growing up in that sort of environment, like what sort of pressure do you put on yourself? Like what and does do you still grapple with any of that if there was an impact of that, or have you worked out powerful ways to deal with that? Like I'm interested, as far as you're comfortable to talk, I think that would be some really interesting stuff for us all to get, because you've grown up in a fully sporting family. And not only that.
Yes and no. I mean, Dad is obviously the sportiest sport of all of us. Yeah. But my mum, she played basketball when she was younger, but not particularly sporty. My brother's a musician, so he wasn't particularly involved in the sporting stuff. So I think that's why Dad and I were quite bonded, like very, very close. Like, you know, everyone knew that we were always together and it was the best thing ever. But no, like it was really common everywhere we'd go. Dad would look at himself in the mirror and he would always check himself out. And it was like, I will never forget, it was one day he goes, oh, my calves are really small. And that was it. So he cut all the legs off his pants and just wore shorts. So he had to stare at his calves until they grew bigger. And he did the things to make them bigger. Yeah.
Wow. Love
I'm
it.
still wearing those shorts today.
Yeah. Very, very common. But now he's got gigantic calves. So he's made it work for him.
Yeah, that's an interesting hack. If you don't like something about yourself, put it on display until you deal with it. I like that.
Expose your weakness.
Yeah. Wow. Powerful.
But no, it was an interesting thing. I mean, Dad, as much as he was always, you know, a good loser is still a loser. It always gave you an opportunity to learn. I was really, really lucky that Mum and Dad were happy to pick me up and drive me everywhere because obviously as a teenager, I can't drive and I'd spend my time, I'd finish school at 3 o'clock and I'd get on the train down to Richmond to get to Mum and Dad. They had the physiotherapy practice and I'd sit upstairs and maybe get some homework in before the first class started at 4:30 and then I would be there all night. And they would either go home and wait or, you know, come back and pick me up and would deal with the fact that was my Monday to Friday and they'd take me out every Sunday and every other weekend. It was always just this massive amount of support. Wow. So it wasn't as much pressure as it was support. If I wanted to compete, that opportunity was there. If I didn't want to compete, it was made like if for me, I wanted to rank really high in the AFBJJ rankings and I said I didn't want to compete in XYZ, it would be, cool, well, you know how that'll affect your rankings. Is that something you're happy with? You know, you weigh up your options. I was very much given the opportunity to make those decisions for myself, knowing the outcomes for myself.
Mm. That's brilliant.
And Lorna, would you have any... Yep. Sorry, go Andrew.
I was going to say, one of the big things about why we really encouraged part of Jiu-Jitsu for Lorna was I really looked at thinking, when I've got a young child, you want to give them a community that's beyond your family. And because it's important for kids to have peers that they can relate to. And sometimes they're not going to relate really well under the school pressure peer groups, where it's who's popular, who's not, stuff like that. It's important to actually have a peer group outside of family and school. Mm. And this is where the sport becomes beautiful. And to me, it was never going to be an issue whether Lorna wanted to do any particular sports, but I wanted to have something that no matter where in the world she went, she had a community that even if you didn't speak the language, you had a common language of whatever the sport was. Didn't matter if it was going to be tennis, you could go anywhere to a tennis club. Didn't matter if it's going to be weight training. Jiu-Jitsu is this worldwide community that is so beautiful. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I really was able to facilitate and encourage that in Lorna, because I thought, this is great. You've got people anywhere in the world now. You leave us, you can go into any country, any city, and you can probably find somebody in a jiu-jitsu place and you're already going to have a community that's supporting you. Mm. I think there's nothing better you can do for a child, but make sure they have a community outside of you.
Absolutely. That's beautiful.
Lorna, what about you? What advice would you give to anyone that maybe is a juvenile or junior jiu-jitsu athlete in terms of, you know, how to get through? Because you were around at a time where there was not a lot of girls, not a lot of younger athletes, and yeah, you stood the distance, like you went the distance. So what would you say, what advice would you give to anyone listening or parents of anyone listening?
I would actually say probably speak to a sports psychologist as you start to make the transition out of teenager into adult, because it is a really, really uncharted territory. And that was probably my biggest downfall, was navigating who I was going to be after setting these massive records and doing so much from such a young age. And then really struggling because there's this massive, massive gap where you go, I was up here and now I'm lumped in with everyone else, but everyone's still got this expectation that I'm up here. How do you cope with that? Wow. You know, as a parent, I would be saying, you know, make sure your child's got that support. Speak to the coaches, sit down on a regular basis and see what needs have to be met. You know, have those conversations where you're checking in that they are comfortable and confident in what's changing, because it's an awful time to be a teenager anyway. Like kids have it, too much going on. Piling on that kind of pressure is bizarre. I mean, I'd never done anything outside of jiu-jitsu. Like that was my whole world. And don't get me wrong, I loved it and I would not change it for the world. But while my friends were going out and getting drunk in fields, I was sleeping because I had to get up early to go and train. Or I knew that I had schoolwork I had to do because I wanted to train. And that was more important to me than those social things. So then learning to navigate having a social life, being in charge of your own education, like transitioning into university, if that's what you're going through, making sure that you've got the capacity to learn to juggle that. Dad always says that, no good life is balanced. And to a degree, that's fair, but you've got to learn to find where you're not going to burn out.
That's amazing. That's so powerful. So what is the impact? And obviously it's just great advice. Like I wish Macca had done that. Now he's kind of dabbling with jiu-jitsu again, or the thought of it at least. But where has it left you with your relationship to jiu-jitsu, that transition? Are you completely done with it, like burnt out, never go back? Or are you, maybe I'll just do it for fun sometimes? Like what's your relationship now to jiu-jitsu?
I don't think fun is in my vocabulary when it comes to anything that could be competitive, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I mean, I got injured when I was 17. I mean, I finished school when I was 17. So I took a bit of a step back. And at that time, took a little bit off, not too long. It was a couple of months, I think. And then Dad was treating a few of the guys that were at Debeans and St Kilda. And Pete reached out and said, if she's comfortable and she wants to be there, happy to have her. And I remember I didn't show up for the first class I said I was going to. And the fact that he messaged Dad and said, hope everything's okay, we're here when she's ready, was really, really important to me. And I had to learn to get a job and become a functional adult. So the jiu-jitsu stuff definitely fell away for a while. But now that I'm looking to move into state, which is going to be a big change, I'm really hoping that I can start to find a bit more balance, because I've worked bizarre night shifts, and I mean, working in policing, you get thrown all over the roster, same with security, all over the roster, and I could never predict what my week was going to be like or how bad I was going to feel from working night shifts. So now that I'm looking to work a normal 9 to 5 in a new place, I'm really hoping that I can get back to enjoying it, because it always crosses my mind, always. So I'd like to get back.
I'm really happy.
We'd like you back too.
There's going to be a happy ending to this story, people.
Not that sort of happy ending, Anton. Come on. Sorry.
And Andrew, what Lorna brings up is really interesting, because it parallels what happened in my career essentially too. She found there's a problem as you transition from that almost that childhood going into the next stage of your life. I was seriously ready to play professional baseball in America, and I'd left realistically that level of, I'm in the junior crew and I'm into the senior crew now, and I was still needing coaching. Whereas as an adult, at a lot of points, you are so more independent. But there is a transition there as you head towards the adult part, which you still need a coach who knows that you're still maybe an adult physically, but you're still not mentally.
I mean, I think psychologically, it's your frontal lobe doesn't close until you're 25.
Yeah.
But, you're expected to treat and act like an adult from the minute you turn 18. I mean, competitively, you are treated as an adult, but your brain, that functionality.
Mac is bigger and stronger than me already. He's 16, and it's like, so for all intents and purposes, everybody assumes he's an adult, but he's still making very childish choices in some areas, but he can fake being an adult. That's the other part. Kids are getting better at faking and saying the right things to even seem more adult than they are. So,
it is there. And that's, I think, a huge part of the challenge of the transition for the younger athlete and for the family around that younger athlete, is knowing that they still need a little bit more support. They're not quite as independent as they actually appear to be. If I'd had that, I probably would have kept going over to States and played. But I sort of just, at a crucial point, didn't have the right coaches around who were aware of that. And I just moved off into something else that I was going to then enjoy more. I think, like Lorna and myself, we both enjoy success. And when it changes to you're not training as well as you should because perhaps something's not quite sparking you the way it was, then your performance drops at the same time. Your output's only as good as your input. If you're not going to train as enthusiastically and as brilliantly, then your performance after that isn't satisfying to you. So there's a real challenge of being able to keep the fire on the practice that then translates to the next stage.
Absolutely. Wow.
I mean, I can guarantee you that I wouldn't have recognized how much I needed that assistance because I was a teenager who suddenly thought that I could do everything and knew everything because I was now an adult. But I would be 100% if I could go back and slap myself and say, Jesus, you needed to go and speak to someone and get that support, even though you don't think you need it. Sitting down and having those conversations could have made the biggest world of difference.
But just before you ask the next question, Kim, like what is really standing out to me right now is the importance of coaching and the coaching community recognizing when people are kind of fading a little bit and recognizing that this could come to it's not rocket science, but this could come to a Y junction where this person never comes back, and just getting in their world, understanding, getting them in touch with a sports psychologist, all these sorts of things sound like really smart moves to keep the community growing and keep that person in a really happy place with their life.
You've got to have a great connection with your coach. Honestly, it is the biggest thing. If you don't get along with your coach, and for me, if it's not a person that I would actually want to spend time with outside of the gym and outside of the training, I'm not going to relate to the way that you speak to me, because there is a different level of respect for someone that you appreciate outside of that role. You know, you've got to have more personality to you than just jiu-jitsu, as much, because then you hear, well, this helps with this. You've got more respect for that person. And you know that you can go to them with a problem that may not relate directly to you jiu-jitsu, but XYZ is happening in my personal life. You're someone I trust that I can come and speak to, because this is affecting my ability to show up on the mat. And that affects my ability to be a normal person in my job, to function in my relationships at home. Like, everything is intertwined. You want someone that is going to be there more than just a coach.
Aww.
Yeah,
I
great.
love that.
Yeah.
It comes back really strongly because I was actually speaking to a guy today who's one of the world champions, and he came off a 2-year massive injury thing where he was told his career was over. And he's coming back for a contest in 6 weeks' time. And he's probably a little bit disappointed in himself because he's not going to perform as well as he was projecting from 6 months ago when he was working. I just said to him, you've actually got to appreciate to be great, you've got to be so out of balance. You've got to sacrifice something. You've got to sacrifice your family. You've got to sacrifice your work. You're going to be out of balance to be great. No one who is balanced is great. You've got to sacrifice something. He's back into a life of balance now. And I said, you've actually got to be very proud of yourself that you've actually restored your family life balance. You've done so much for so many other people. How about you just earn the right to smile and go compete, and then maybe take a little bit back for yourself on the next one. So don't be afraid to be out of balance if you know where it comes.
I love that view. That's amazing.
Well, I was going to say that we're nearly out of time and ask if Andrew has any final words of wisdom. That sounds like a pretty good one. But just quickly, if you can condense it as best you can, you're a very busy man. It was quite hard to tie down. What have you been up to recently that's made you so busy, and what can we look forward to from you in the future?
Well, remember the pure beauty about a life is that you'll never work a day in your life if you follow your passion. I don't actually consider that I actually work at all. I get up and I'm driven to know more about my areas of speciality. I will go to the gym now. I'll test out something on myself. I'll come back this afternoon. I've got research to play with. You live if it's jiu-jitsu, you'll never, if you're involved in that, you're not actually going to work. You're going to live. You're going to love. You're going to be passionate. So that's the most important thing. I think we want Lorna to have that same experience. You're never actually going to work a day if you just follow your passion. That's who you are. Be true to yourself, not to someone else as much.
Yeah, that's great. That's beautiful. That's probably a nice place to end it, don't you think, Anton? Or
I agree, unless Lorna's got something else she wants to contribute.
I will leave it all in the words of the genius. So
All
I
right.
think we're very good.
Well, we're going to catch up Sunday night, Lorna, to watch a Disney movie and have dinner.
Oh, love daddy-daughter time. That's awesome.
Always.
awesome.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, guys. This episode will probably be out in a couple of weeks. So if you could share it however you can. We have a YouTube channel. We're on Instagram, Spotify, iTunes, all of that. We're a
Look
small
forward to
little
it.
podcast with hopefully eventually a very big following. That's what we're aiming for. So thank you so much for joining us and giving up
Wonderful
your
to catch up
time.
with you both.
Yeah.
And,
Thanks for having
yeah,
us.
Cheers.
thank you. We'll see you soon.
See you soon.
See ya.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.